Hello again and welcome back to the channel. This is Michael from TOEFLresources.com, and today's lesson is about how to write the TOEFL independent essay. As you probably know, the independent essay is the last thing you'll do on the TOEFL test. You'll be given a question and you'll have 30 minutes to write an essay that answers that question. I recommend that you aim for about 380 to 400 words. Before we get started, let's talk a little bit about what the question is going to look like. You're going to get one of these 4 question styles. First up is the agree-disagree style. This is the most common question style. It seems to come up about 60% of the time when people take the test. It's pretty straightforward. You get a sentence and you're asked whether or not you agree or disagree with it. So in this case, I wrote, the best way for students to improve their social skills is to work in groups. Do you agree or disagree with that? And that'll be your whole essay. Next up is the preference style. This comes up maybe about 20% of the time when people take the test. It's somewhat similar, but in this case, you're asked to choose between 2 options. I won't read the whole thing, but here you're asked to choose between working in groups or asking more questions during class. You pick one, you write the essay. Also, about 20% of the time is the multiple choice. Again, this time you're asked to pick from 3 options, or sometimes even 4 or 5 options. In this case, you have to say whether you prefer working in groups, asking more questions, or joining a sports team. Lastly, at the bottom of the screen is the good idea style. It's quite rare. I mean, it comes up like 1% or 2% of the time. I almost think I should take it out of the video, but you might get it, so I've put it in here. In this kind of question, you're presented with a scenario or a trend or something that happens, and you're asked whether or not you think it's a good idea. So I phrased it like, many teachers these days require mandatory group work in their classes. Do you think this is a good idea? So these are the 4 question styles that might come up on the test. If you see something different in a book or on a website, they're probably using out-of-date information because the test has changed a little bit over the years. If you want a bit more practice, here are 6 questions that have sort of appeared on the test lately. Of course, these are not exactly the same as what has been on the test, but it's kind of similar to what ETS is using these days. I won't read them all here, but you can pause the video if you want to check them out. I will emphasize that you're probably going to get a question about education, which comes up maybe like 40% of the time, according to surveys I've done, or a question about work and jobs, which is fairly common, or something broad about society and trends and changes in society. If you want to learn more about how to write essays based on these questions, keep an eye on the channel. I'm going to upload videos over the next week or 2 where I actually answer these questions and I talk about the essays I've created based on them. So anyways, let's get to the lesson. I'm going to show you today how to write a fairly good TOEFL independent essay. Broadly speaking, I recommend a 4-paragraph template. The template starts with an introductory paragraph. The first sentence of the introductory paragraph is like a background sentence where you make a broad generalization about the world. Most people in the world think that students should have really good social skills if they want to succeed in their careers. Most people in the world think that teachers have a profound impact on young people. You see what I mean? I'm starting with a broad generalization of the world. I'll show you examples of this in just a moment, a complete essay. The next sentence in your introduction is your thesis. Personally, I believe, and then you state what you think. Personally, I believe that the best way for students to develop good social skills is to ask a lot of questions in class. Personally, I believe that students should join a sports team if they want to improve their social skills. And then you end it with some kind of transition. There are several reasons why I feel this way, which I will explore in the following essay. That's your introduction. It's going to be 3 sentences. You should probably spend about 4 minutes writing it. After that, you've got a couple of body paragraphs. Each body paragraph starts with a supporting reason. Like, to begin with, sports help students to learn about teamwork. To begin with, sports help students learn how to collaborate with their peers. After that, you write a couple of explanatory sentences. What do you mean by that? Elaborate on your supporting reason. And then a transitional sentence. My personal experience is a compelling example of this. And then you should describe an experience from your life in 4 or 5 or 6 sentences that illustrates what you mean. And again, I'll show you an essay that does this in just a moment. The second body paragraph is pretty much the same. Start with furthermore, and then give a second reason to support your main argument. A couple of explanatory sentences, and then another example from your life, a different example. End the essay with a conclusion. In conclusion, I strongly feel that, and then paraphrase your thesis. Again, repeat your main point, but use slightly different words. This is because, and then you should paraphrase the first reason, and you should paraphrase the second reason. So when you write that conclusion, you're not going to copy and paste from above. So this is the broad structure for your essay. In total, it'll probably come out to something like 380 to 400 words. That's what I recommend. You may not be able to get there right away, but make it your ultimate goal as you continue to practice. All right, let's talk about my essay. So I chose the preference one. Do I think it's better for teachers to encourage group work or to encourage students to ask more questions? Here's my introduction, and I've highlighted the template in blue. I'm using it, I think, exactly as I presented it a second ago. Most people in the world think that young children should get along well with their classmates and feel comfortable when they talk to their friends. Personally, I believe that teachers should encourage their students to do group work as often as possible. There are several reasons why I feel this way, which I will explore in the following essay. 3 sentences, that came out to 59 words. I think that's ideal. What did I do in this introduction to make it high scoring and effective? Well, here's what I did. I didn't copy and paste when I wrote the opening line. I didn't just copy a bunch of stuff from this question when I wrote the opening line. I used my own ideas, my own thoughts. I introduced the general theme of the question, right? The question is about children, so I mentioned that. It's about social skills, so I mentioned getting along with classmates. And that's what I did. I didn't pick a side in the opening line. The opening line is just for background. It's to introduce the general theme of the essay. There should be no indication of what my main point is when you read the opening line. I used a few words and phrases related to the topic, as I said a moment ago, that don't appear in the question prompt. So I used stuff like get along with. That's strongly related to social skills. I used feel comfortable. I used children. I used friends. Those are all key words that are related to the general theme of the question, but they didn't appear in the question prompt. So I put them in my opening line. That's kind of increase my vocabulary score with the E-Rater. And I slightly paraphrased the question when I wrote my thesis. So I did not copy it word for word. I did not say, personally, I feel that the best way for teachers to help students improve their social skills is to make them work in groups while at school. I didn't just copy it word for word. I gently paraphrased it. I changed a few words and the structure, and I moved a few things around. This is not a test of your ability to copy and paste. This is a test of your ability to use language. So don't do any copy paste. My body paragraph. I won't read the whole thing, but you can pause the video if you want to check it out. Came out to 159 words. Again, that's pretty standard for this task. You should write the same. What did I do to make this a strong body paragraph? Well, I did once again use some target vocabulary related to the themes of the question. I used things like interpersonal skills and fulfilling social lives and resolved this conflict and stronger relationships. These are all words related to the question. They're not like really difficult and obscure words. They're not really strange, unique words. I don't want you to do that. I want you to use good words. I want you to use fairly advanced words, but I want them to relate to the question you've been asked. That'll make them sound a lot more natural, and it'll please both the human rater and the e-rater, the AI, which checks your essay. I wrote a personal example about a specific incident. So you can see that my example is all about a very specific project I worked on 1 month in a class. So I was able to mention specifically it was a history class. I could say it was about the Industrial Revolution. And then I could specifically mention the problem I had and the specific solution. This is better than a broad example. Some people try to write an example which covers their entire high school life or an entire year of their life. And they'll say something like, I took a lot of classes and they all had group work and I always collaborated with others. That's okay, but I don't recommend it. It often leads to repetitive vocabulary and even repetitive grammar because you're always using the same verb tenses. I want you to give specific examples, narrow down more on specific incidents and events from your life. I used complex sentences, and I mean complex sentences in the grammatical sense. If you don't know what complex sentences are, you better look them up because it's important. So stuff like, since I lived quite far away from him, and when I was in 7th grade, those are dependent clauses to create complex sentences. I also used compound sentences. I ended one with, so everyone in the class formed groups. You want to use complex, compound, and simple sentences when you write these essays. I used a few adverbs. If you look, you'll see I used immediately, and I used an adverb of frequency, often, and I've done the same thing in the next body paragraph. Don't neglect the use of adverbs. People have an easier time remembering to use adjectives, but they often forget adverbs. Keep that in mind. My second body paragraph is a little bit shorter. It came out to 138 words. Again, I've used the template, such as it is. Just 3 words is the template. What did I do to make this a strong paragraph? Well, I use transitional phrases like consequently, as a result, for instance. These are really key phrases. You want to use these throughout your essay. They improve your organization and your structure, and I think the human rater is trained to look for them. So you might also want stuff like additionally, however, furthermore, therefore. Use those phrases often in your essays. I used various verb tenses throughout the paragraph. So it's not all in the past tense. I think I've got the simple present. I've got the past tense. I think I've got the past perfect tense in here as well. That's one of the reasons why you need the explanatory part. Some people will just jump right into the personal example, and they'll make that personal example like the whole paragraph. That's a bad idea because often the personal examples are entirely in the past tense right? And that makes sense because you're talking about something you did in the past. You're going to have sentence after sentence after sentence in the past tense. So, but if you put in that explanatory content before the example, you'll have an easier time using the simple present because you're going to make like generalizations about how the world is today. If you want to try something really impressive, you could try an inversion. I said, rarely have I gone more than a few days without calling Sally or seeing her in person. That's just a little kind of fancy trick I've been working on lately. I think it gives you some grammatical complexity. So if you're comfortable doing it, try it out. You would generally want to do it by using an adverb of frequency at the beginning of a sentence. I used an appositive. I think it's called an appositive. That's not a term I'm totally familiar with, but I looked it up. You can see how I used especially children within these two commas. Most people, especially children, avoid starting conversations with strangers. That's, again, a grammatical technique that might make your essay look a little more advanced, and it's not too hard to do once you get used to it. I used a perfect tense, as I said. I had not talked to her before then. I think once or twice in your essay, you want to use the past perfect tense or the present perfect tense. I think that'll show off a bit more grammatical complexity, and the E-Rater AI scoring engine will like it. I tried my best to avoid repeating words by using synonyms. So towards the end of the essay, I referred to collaborative assignments instead of group work. Now, I know collaborative assignments, it sounds a little bit clunky, and it's probably more natural just to say group work, for the 10th time. But you do want to avoid repeating words too much. And so try your best to use synonyms, even if you think maybe it's a little bit awkward. And yes, as you can see from this essay, it's fine to use contractions. Some teachers are really hung up on how you shouldn't use any contractions in a TOEFL essay. I think it's totally fine. Don't overdo it, but 1 or 2 or 3 times is fine. No one's going to care. And indeed, sometimes a contraction is more natural, even in so-called academic writing. Lastly, there's a conclusion. This one was 41 words. Not much to say about this. Keep it short and sweet. Don't overdo it. The conclusion is just going to take you 2 or 3 minutes, and then you're done the essay. Instead of writing a long conclusion, consider saving time for proofreading. But a few things to mention. Don't copy and paste from above when you write the conclusion. So when you repeat your main argument, don't just copy it from the introduction. You need to rephrase it slightly. Not a ton, not a lot, but just rephrase it as much as you can. Change a few words, maybe change the order of the words if you can. For rhetorical effect, you could try a parallelism at in the final sentence when you repeat the reasons. I wrote, this is because it can show them how to compromise and how to make new personal connections. That repetition of how to, it looks nice, has a good rhetorical effect, feels really natural, and I think it's a feature of more sophisticated writing. This is not something you should overdo in your essays, because these are just short, but maybe in the conclusion, or maybe in one of the body paragraphs, you can try that technique. See how it feels. And that's about it. That's how you can write the TOEFL Independent Essay in 2022. There are a few things that I did not do. What did I not do? Well, I've mentioned a few of these along the way, but you shouldn't state the opposite of your thesis in the opening line. That looks lazy. So don't say, some people think that the best way for teachers to improve the social skills of their students is to encourage them to ask questions. However, I think the best way is to make them work in groups. Don't do that. That's That's repetitive, it looks lazy, it's derivative. Do what I said and start with a broad introduction to the general theme of the essay. Second of all, many students waste time trying to write long and complicated opening lines. They really overthink it. They think for some reason that opening line has to be the best damn sentence in the world. It really doesn't. Just write something quick, write something easy, write something straightforward, and move on. I check 10 or 15 essays every day, and most of the time, the worst sentence is the opening line because the student has tried to do too much. They've really overthought it, and they end up hurting their score with the opening line. That's not what they want. Don't try to use idioms or proverbs. They usually look horrible. Look, there's no special bonus for using "it was raining cats and dogs." It's, I don't know, again, some students think and some teachers think that you'll get like bonus points if you use a silly idiom or a proverb in the essay. That's not the case. Most of the time, it's going to end up hurting you. To use an idiom myself, you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot. Don't do it. Don't use quoted speech. Don't try to quote people. Don't say something like, "In grade 6, my teacher said, Sally, you should work in a group." No, just use reported speech. Just say, "My teacher told me I should work in a group." I see a lot of essays with quotations. They never really look good. Don't do that. Next up, kind of controversial, but I think it needs to be said. It's okay to pick one side and to ignore the other. Like, my essay was totally about group work, and I completely ignored the concept of asking questions, right? I didn't even refer to the other option once, and that's totally fine. You can still get a perfect score if you focus on your side. Generally, it's easier to focus on your side. Look, you could take a different approach and talk about the other side if you want. That's acceptable also, but you don't have to do it. Lastly, don't write more than 400 words. Seriously, you don't need to write more than that. I get a lot of essays and it's like 600 words, 700 words, 800 words. I kid you not. Don't do that. Every time I get a 600-word essay, it is a mess. It's full of mistakes because the student's working so fast. Look, even I can't write a good 800-word essay in 30 minutes. Like, it's humanly impossible. So just kind of slow down, 380, 390, 400 words, and focus on grammar and language use, not on just increasing your word count. If you've got time left over at the end, use that time for proofreading, to fix mistakes. Don't use that time to shove more crap into the body paragraphs. It's not going to help. All right, we will conclude with the FAQ. Questions I get all the time. Is there a word limit? No, you can write as much as you want. Now, I just told you shouldn't, but there is no penalty. There's no specific penalty for writing a long essay. Do you get what I mean? On the screen, when you take the test, it will say a typical essay is 350 words. That's not a rule. That's not a requirement. That's just a statement. A typical essay, you can write as much as you want. There's no penalty. Will I get punished for using these templates? No. Look, you're allowed to say "to begin with." You're allowed to say "furthermore." You're allowed to say "I feel this way." What you'll get punished for is when you memorize entire essays, when you memorize an entire personal example. That's what you'll get punished for. As I said, another question, do I need to write about the other choices? No, you don't need to do that. You can focus on your choice. Do I really need personal examples? The answer is no. Like, you don't need to include them. They're not mandatory. I recommend personal examples because they're easy. because they lead to good vocabulary, because they lead to grammatical diversity, but they're not mandatory. You could write a totally persuasive argument that simply consists of your own ideas and theories and logical connections. That's fine too. That's kind of like on the IELTS for what it's worth, isn't it? How much should I write? Again, 380 to 400 words. I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but these are the questions I get every single day. All right, I am going to leave it at that. But if you have any questions, you can leave a comment down below. I will be happy to answer them as soon as I can. If you want to know more about what I do, you can stop by TOEFLresources.com. I have guides to all the sections of the test. I have detailed writing guides, and I also have an essay evaluation service where if you email me your essay, I will give you a score. I will fix all your grammar and usage mistakes. I will give you some comments about what you did right and what you did wrong, and then I'll send it all back to you. And a lot of people find that's a service that helps them increase their TOEFL writing score. So if that's something you're interested in, stop by the website. I'll put a link down below in the comments. All right, I'm going to leave it at that, but make sure to come back to the channel over the next few days, and I'm going to talk about all those sample essays. I'll answer all the questions you saw on the screen a moment ago. All right, take care, guys. I will see you later.